You're welcome back. It's still Daybreak here on Trust TV, and it's time for our discussion segment. Like I said before, we went on break that we're going to be doubling back on the 10th Assembly, but this time we'll be hearing from experts who are joining us, on set to give a critical insight and analysis of the 10th Assembly. So, like we said, with the number of bills being passed, critics argue that the quality, of the bill is one thing that needs to be looked at, with many being recycled from previous assemblies. The National Assembly has also faced criticism for handling key issues like electoral reform, budget oversight, and constituency projects. But Speaker Abbas has defended the Assembly's record, saying they've been proactive and productive in their legislative work, with a focus on critical reforms that Nigeria urgently needs. He highlights the Assembly's ambitious legislative agenda, which aims to restore hope in democracy and deliver good governance. So joining us today are Dengiyefa Angalapu, a research analyst with the Center for Democracy and Development, CDD. Thank you for joining us right here in the studio.
Good morning. Good to be here.
And we have via Zoom, political affairs commentator, who is joining us all the way from Yola, Sunday Amos. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Sunday.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Now, we will be discussing the impacts, challenges, and future prospect of the 10th Assembly. Have they lived up to expectation? What are their highlights and lowlights and their performance so far? So I'm going to be starting with you, Mr. Sunday. Rate the 10th National Assembly. Where would you place them from 1 to 10? Would you say they're doing well, or they're fallen flat on their face? Or there's more to be done or more to be seen?
Well, thank you very much for that question, and good morning to my colleague in the studio there. And I would have loved to even find out in the first place, gauge them on a scale of 1 to 10 based on what? You say they have done okay based on what? So could you be a little more specific? Because there are public perceptions, there are their own statutory responsibilities, the overall impact on. Do you want just generally like that, or there's a specific focus you want me to dwell on using that scale?
Their impact on the lives of Nigerians in terms of bills being passed and how these bills are affecting the lives of average Nigerians.
Well, in that case, on a scale of 10, I will be very generous by giving them 3 over 10, as far as impact on the lives of Nigerians is concerned.
Okay.
Because usually what you see is that whatever comes out on paper remains on paper. It is there in the sky. It never reaches down to the ordinary man on the ground. And I always like talking about the proverbial African dog that was asked about the party taking place in their house. And the dog replied, I have not seen it on the ground. So it is very disheartening to watch on the TV robust discussions at the National Assembly, the House of Representatives, the Senate. But you hear all those things, you read about all of those things on the pages of newspapers. They never translate to reality on the ground. They never translate to food on the table. They never translate to reduction in fuel pump price in a meaningful way. You don't go on the streets and ask them about the impact of the National Assembly, and they say, yes, we are feeling it. So as far as I am concerned, whatever they do in those so-called hall chambers remains there. It doesn't translate to reality on the ground. And that is why I said I would be very generous by giving them 3 over 10.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Sunday. We do appreciate your generosity this morning. Let's get back to our colleague here in the studio. He gave them 3 over 10. Now, let me get your opinion. Where would you place them in terms of bills being passed and how these bills are affecting the average Nigerians? And how do you measure the effectiveness of a legislator or a lawmaker beyond the number of bills being sponsored? What metrics truly reflect that impact?
Quite an interesting question. First off, I will say I agree with my colleague. 3/10 is quite generous, and I completely, agree with him. I will say that the legislature is a very, very important arm of government. I would even argue that it is, the most important arm of government because it basically sets the ground rules for other arms to operate, with, whether you talk of the executive or the judiciary. So it is very, very it is very, very, very important. And it is a very important democratic institution. So I like the fact, first off, that we are talking about the legislature this time and not the executive after 2 years. The normal conversation will be to raise the executive. So I think it's a very, very important conversation. That being said, the 10th Assembly is one that is quite peculiar for several reasons. One, because it is one that is quite diverse and at inception it had a different, it had a multi-party system. The first assembly since 1999 that had, about 8 political parties. If you recall, it was even difficult to choose a speaker, and and the conversation was like, oh, how can the APC even emerge as the speakership of the House of Assembly if the minority political parties unite? It was a very, very heated conversation. So it means there was a lot of some level of prospect. People looked at the National Assembly as one that would have a lot of debate and all of that. Now, after 2 years, what have we seen? I do not think that the National Assembly today represents, quite frankly, the aspirations of the common people in Nigeria. You've highlighted several bills that they've passed, including some very important ones like the national, like the student loan bill. Yes. quite an important one. We have the national security architecture bill. There are quite a lot that they've done. So I wouldn't say they've not done anything. But out of 477 bills, only 25 bills have been passed. For 2 years, if you look at by any rating, you will see that itself, it's low when it comes to lawmaking, and all that. So it is very, very low. Now, coming again to whether or not these bills meet the aspiration of the people, many Nigerians will actually agree with me that there are important bills that needs to be pushed on, into law in Nigeria, and it's quite unfortunate that it is those bills that have actually suffered setback. We've seen symbolic bills like the National Anthem bill being passed into law, while several bills, to see how we can reform our elections, to see how possibly we can even get. There have been a bill to ensure that the presidency, serves just a single six-year term. There've also been a bill to ensure that we perhaps move away from presidential system to parliamentary system. There have been quite very great bills, frankly, but they've not seen the light of the day. Now, very importantly, I think I will just introduce this point and come back to it, is the fact that why Nigerians are very worried is the fact that they see the National Assembly as being pliant to the executive arm of government. That's an important point I think we will touch on.
Yes, I think I'll allow Mr. Sunday start with that, the National Assembly. What would you take about their relationship with the executive? That is one. And two, we saw the reintroduction of the old anthem getting rapid attention from them, and we saw how quickly it was passed. What does it say about the priorities of the lawmakers versus the actual need of the people?
The relationship between the National Assembly and the executive has been very, very cordial, extremely cordial. And it's not a burden for such cordiality to exist. Every Senate President and every Speaker of the House of Representatives take time to make it a point that they were not established to fight the executive. That is correct. They were not established to fight the executive. And it is good for the country for that cordiality to exist between the National Assembly and the executive. But when it gets to a point when always the eyes have it, especially with the large number of opposition in the National Assembly, then something becomes suspicious. you find out that when you hear kind of robust debates that take place either in the Ghanaian National Assembly, the Kenyan National Assembly, the South African National Assembly, and you watch how the opposition speak very boldly and point accusing fingers, where they feel that things are not going right. You now come to the Nigerian National Assembly with a large number of opposition, whether it is the new national anthem or the old national anthem, whether it has to do with supporting the Rivers State state of emergency or what bills. There seems to be a conspiracy of silence from the opposition. That is not natural. It is not natural that you have something very controversial and not a single dissenting voice, like the Rivers National, the Rivers state of emergency, not a single dissenting voice with the large number of opposition members in the National Assembly. How possible is that? So you know that something is fishy. So what we have, just like my league has said, and just like everybody has been saying, that the National Assembly is a rubber stamp. It has been pocketed by the executive. In fact, there is even a cartoon that shows tinubu walking towards 2027 with about 4 to 5 dogs, all on the leash. And one of the dogs is labeled National Assembly. The other dog is security agencies. The other dog is the judiciary. The other dog is INEC. All of them are his dogs, and they are all on the leash, and he's holding the leash. So we have a situation where the National Assembly is fully in the pocket of the executive. There has to be cordiality. And I also like to make a point that when they are interested in a matter, the matter is past their alacrity. But when they are not interested, like the minimum wage, in how many hours did they pass new national anthem? How long did it take before they were able to come to 70,000 naira for new minimum wage? And before they even agreed on the new minimum wage, the government has already come up with strategies for taking back that 7,000 naira from Nigerians. So at the end of the day, the whole approval for the 70,000 became a futile exercise. Even before the 70,000 was approved, plans were on ground to take back the 70,000 from Nigerians. So when you look at the cordiality between the National Assembly and the executive, you know that there's something under the table that is responsible for that cordiality. And maybe I will have opportunity to talk about it later in the program. It is based on 2 factors. 1, inducements, and 2, fear. The culture of fear that the leaders of the National Assembly have put on ground for any opposition, and the inducement that they have used to secure that 100 support from opposition members and from every member of the National Assembly. These are the 2 things that are responsible for why every member of the National Assembly has been whipped into line, make sure that they support everything that the executive once supported the National Assembly.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sunday, for opening that can this morning, although Mr. Angalapu opened that can, but you decided to dig deep into it. So, Angalapu, what do you think about what he has said? You made mention of the fact that since 1999, this is a National Assembly that has diverse opposition. A lot more, 8 different political parties. Still yet, we find them. And these political parties all have different party ideologies. They all have different things they stand by. But we still find them aligning in one train of thought. There are no certain level of debate as to bills that are being passed or things that are affecting constituency or legislative processes. So would you say that the legislature and the executive are too close for comfort?
Yes. So I will agree completely with my colleague that says it is not as though different arms of government should fight. I mean, that in itself is not good for the country. But there is a fundamental principle, whether in the office space or in the political space, and that is the fact that collegiality should not take the place of professionalism. And this, for me, aptly captures what we have in Nigeria. There is a principle called separation of power. Separation of power, I mean, basically means that all arms of government are equal and coordinate in their own right. So they are supposed to check the excesses of various forms of the different arms of government. But in the case of Nigeria, where we see the executive appearing stronger, in terms of power balances, in terms of allocation of funds and all of that, the legislature becomes, subservient to the executive arm of government, and this is why it is dangerous. Now, there are several indicators that have shown that the 10th National Assembly needs to do better. One was when the president was invited to the National Assembly, and suddenly the senators began to sing, "On your mandate we shall stand." I mean, these are elected officials. The president is also elected officials. I mean, if you're standing on the mandate of anybody, you should be standing on the mandate of the electorate that elected you, right? But you are standing on the mandate of another elected official. I mean, so it gives me the feeling of appointment. I mean, if the ministers say on your mandate we shall stand, I could understand because the president basically appointed them. But the president did not appoint you. You have a primary constituency. And why, for me, why is this dangerous? It is dangerous for me really because in the system of government that we practice, democracy, all of us cannot go and debate on an issue because, I mean, democracy, we are large. Many people are many, right? So it means that we've elected you to speak on our behalf. So we expect that, that whatever you say represents the vast majority of your constituency, right? But you are there, not even hearing from the constituency, you are going to sing on your mandate we shall stand. I think for me it is a very frightening reality, and I think that is what Nigerians are really, really worried about. I mean, it was very exciting, like I would say. We had a multi-party system, so we expected that the debate to be so intense, and this was supposed to be a springboard to better democratic performance in the future. So, for example, we saw Labour Party perform very well, NNPP perform very well, and we expected that by 2027, they would now, deepen the gains that we've seen. But again, because of this whipping in line and all of that, threats and all of that, and again, let's not forget, even National Assembly members, don't forget the case of Natasha and also other colleagues that will say, you are basically getting me in the National Assembly. I would even raise my hands and then, you would not point me to speak and all of that. So there's some sort of guided democracy. So we expected by 2027, this multi-party system would be deepened. But what has happened? We've seen National Assembly members now defecting to the major political parties. And that for us, it's a dangerous trend in our democratic trajectory, because no one party in this country can aggregate all of the interest of Nigerians, no one single party. So I think that the pliancy of the National Assembly, for me, is one problem that I'm really worried about. Now let's compare this assembly with the assembly that we had during the Olusegun Obasanjo time. Olusegun Obasanjo tried to play a stunt when he wanted to see how the constitution can be manipulated for a third term bid, right? And I'm imagining if this happens in this present assembly, will it succeed or not? I mean, I want Nigerians to answer that question in their heart, looking at how some of the bills have been passed. If there is a genuine reason, right? Genuine reason. I mean, there is some conspiracy to say there is a third term bill for the current president. I think that even if it doesn't pass, right, they are going to give Nigerians a run
for their money.
I mean, so yes.
Yes, let me get Sunday's thought on this now. He has spoken about this, and this is very scary. I've not even thought it towards that angle before, saying that the tendency of this assembly putting the stamp on whatever it is that comes out for the executive is very high, including the possibility of a third term bill, if it's thought about. Do you agree with that standpoint? And at this point, where does this leave the fate of Nigerians, and how can Nigerians step in? Is there anything Nigerians can do in terms of holding these legislators accountable?
Well, like we've stated before, as it stands with the present president, the present Senate president and present speaker, the present crop of judiciary, the present crop of security agencies they have on ground, anything that Tinubu wants from the National Assembly, he will get. Anything. You can bold that, you can capitalize that, you can underline that. And the reason because we have seen that no member of the National Assembly has the balls to oppose anything that the leadership of the National Assembly wants passed. A few of them have tried and they have suffered. We have Ali Ndume, we have Natasha here, we have, who was it earlier on, Abdul Lingi, who came out also with some things, and they were even the passion of their lives. And everybody has now been whipped into silence. And so like I said, there are these two-pronged weapons. One, threats, and the other, inducements. And I dare say, I think I had someone earlier say that maybe before the program started, that the National Assembly members have sold their souls to the devil for a plate of pottage. And Tinubu knows how to play this game very well. Bags of Ghana must go, exchanging hands. You will get whatever it is that you want. You know, just look at how silly it is even that he has not yet secured a second term, yet we have already started talking about a third term. I mean, that tells you how very irresponsible we are in this country about governance. At this point, we shouldn't even be talking about the second term, but we're already beginning to talk about a third term. So, but with this National Assembly, there is nothing that the National Assembly leadership wants that the members of the National Assembly will not support. And there is nothing that the presidency wants that the National Assembly will not support. All the antecedents are there that you cannot have any opposition, especially now, like my colleague said, with the mass defection of people from opposition parties into the APC. And the Constitution or the Electoral Act makes it very clear that anybody that leaves the party on which he was elected forfeits that seat. But we see the Senate president, because it suits his purpose and the purpose of his party, defending these defections. Look at what happened in Rivers State. When the whole state assembly defected to the APC, the evidence is there very, very clearly. And yet the Supreme Court came out to say that these people did not defect. Something look that is clearly white, you call it black. Something that is clearly black to white. So there is nothing, there's no magic that we'll expect, I dare say. You ask me what can Nigerians do? I used to be hopeful Nigerians can do something, but when you look at what happened during the Jonathan era, look at all those elements that came out to demonstrate. Tunde Bakare, Wole Soyinka, big general overseers of churches that came out to speak. All of them now have maintained an undignified silence. Many of them are of Yoruba descent, and so they are playing the tribal ticket. It is now their brother who is the president, and they have all kept silent now because it is their brother Yoruba man that is on seat. And they have all of a sudden lost their voice, and they cannot come out to demonstrate against what is happening in this particular country. We've had course in previous programs to talk about tribalism, religious aspects of governance, religious aspect of politics, right, as well as nepotism.
All right.
And this is what we are seeing playing out. And people would have been able to come out like the NSAS protest, but the security agencies are there to unleash on the people. All soldiers that killed those innocent protesters, nothing has happened to them.
All right, Doctor.
So how many people are ready to lose their lives over nothing again?
Indeed.
So this is the dire situation in which we are in currently.
All right. Mr. Sunday, now quickly before we let you go, so let's talk about high-performing legislators. You know, what should be done to those who have turned the House into a TV station, I would say, or just go there to watch? We have a couple who would practically say nothing throughout. All they probably just says maybe ayes and nays. So what can something be done, you know, to hold them accountable and say, oh, what bill have you sponsored? What bill have you passed? You know, what bill have you contributed to better your constituency?
Well, under normal circumstances, my sister, such people should never go back to the National Assembly. Their constituencies will say, okay, you underperformed and therefore you will not go back. But what is happening now is that going back to the National Assembly does not depend on how well you speak or silence, but which group you belong to. And knowing that we do not have an electoral body, knowing that we do not run credible elections, somebody who does not deserve to even contest, and whether he wins or not, he will be made to win. The Senate is presided over by Akpabio, who under normal circumstances in a functioning system should be in jail because of our laws. He is the Senate president, very, very powerful. So, unfortunately, my sister, they are going back to the National Assembly does not depend on their performance. But all these defections now we are being told is for their return to be guaranteed by the president. And if the president guarantees their return simply based on their affiliation to him, it is going to be so be it, because instructions will be given to INEC, instructions will be given to security agencies, and instructions will be given to the judiciary to ensure they are returned.
All right.
This is no longer democracy.
All right, Mr. Sunday, we'll get back to you shortly. Now, let's come back to you. He has made mention of regional politics. He has made mention of ethnicism. It's something that has always eaten Nigeria's democracy, culture, religious biases. He's from my village, he's not from my village. 477 bills. Only 20 have been passed. Some have not gone through first reading. Some are still at committee review levels. Would you say this has played an impact into the amount of bills that are being passed or supported, where regional politics and cultural biases are taking the lead instead of the needs of the people? And, you know, also, I'd love you to touch as well on, you know, those lawmakers who are there to watch and clap and not contribute, you know. Let me get your thoughts on all of that.
Yeah, so I think that regional politics, ethnic politics, sectional politics, however we'll put it, you know, have played quite a very big role in terms of how bills are passed. Let's not forget that when the tax bill came on board, despite the fact that, I mean, I think the tax bill over time has been one of the most debated in this 10th Assembly. And for me, it was very good, but quite also a sad one for one reason. It was debated among ethnic lines. So it was debated more to the fact that, oh, some northern states would not benefit as a result of this or that and that. I was thinking that if such a bill will be debated, it will be debated on the benefits it would have on the Nigerian state and the Nigerian people holistically, generally. So yes, it plays and it will continue to play quite an important role in the Nigerian polity, unfortunately. Now, when it comes to those non-performing senators and, you know, House of Rep members, a fundamental question needs to be asked. We will say let's vote them out and all of that. You know, the constituency has the power and all that. There is also a recall process. Unfortunately, one that is very difficult to come by. But a fundamental question really is, do their constituents even know this record that we are putting out here on TV? The constituency offices, most of them are actually locked. They are not working. What people see as, you know, dividends of a legislative process in many times are now constituency projects, street lights.
Wheelbarrow sharing.
I mean, you know, different kind of petty things. So they don't even judge legislators now based on their primary responsibility to get a bill passed or to debate effectively. So, I mean, there are quite a number of organizations like Order Paper and all of that, Plaque, doing quite a good job in terms of rating these legislators and all of that. But we need to get this information back to the constituents, so for them to know how to vote. The second thing again is that for legislators to be very, very effective, right? I mean, the political parties need to work. Internal democracy in political parties are very, very important for effective legislation, and I'll tell you why. One reason is the fact that when you go into the National Assembly and then you perform or not perform, right? If you are affiliated with the executive arm of government, we in Nigeria, we've now interpreted to be the leader of the party, right? When it comes to the primary election of that party, you will not be selected. And remember, if you're not selected in a primary election of the party, you don't even stand a chance to now, become a candidate in the general elections. So your best bet is to ensure that you become a lackey to the executive or president, or even the leader of the National Assembly, who will now, whatever way you perform, gets you back to get the ticket, and you become come back to the National Assembly. Let's not forget, from 1999 till now, there have been some legislators that have been in the National Assembly, yes. Right? How did they get there? If you study it critically, it is because they are loyal to the government in power, either the National Assembly leader or the presidency. I mean, they are somehow in the good books of all of these people. But I think the Nigerians can actually still do something. And one is to ensure that whether with the use of social media, whether with the use of grassroots mobilization, we must see that our constituency offices are working. We must see that we speak out. And we must also see that we use some critical existing machineries, like the Freedom of Information Act, to demand for critical information about National Assembly performance, bills that they've passed, and critical workings of the National Assembly. Let us not forget, for the National Assembly to work, the EFCC and anti-graft agencies need also to work effectively. I mean, it's quite unfortunate. The National Assembly also plays the oversight role. EFCC, anti-graft agencies also play oversight role. But then look at the recent revelations where budget padding has not stopped in the National Assembly. 6.9 trillion thereabout was added to the budget, and over 11,000 projects that were not very defined and basically duplicated were added into the budget. I mean, this was basically this was put to the air by Budget, a very credible non-governmental organization. So it means that the anti-graft agencies need to do their work. And if different democratic agencies do their work, you will have no option than to work, because you realize that your coming back to the National Assembly will now depend on performance. And if your only hope is that you have to perform to come to the National Assembly, no matter how lazy you are, no matter how inefficient you are, you will do your best.
All right. Well, we're waiting for that to happen in Nigeria. Back to you, Mr. Sunday. He made mention, our guest here, Mr. Angalapu, made mention of constituency offices not working, and this explains a certain level of disconnect Nigerians feel with their legislators and National Assembly members, hence has built the kind of perception Nigerians have about them. Now, why would you say a public perception about lawmakers, a public negative perception about lawmakers does exist? And, what ways can these legislators be closer to their constituents so they could put out laws that truly reflect the needs of their people?
Thank you. Well, currently, the point has been made that the legislators are not accountable to the people who elected them. Hardly will you find a legislator who goes back home to his constituency to take in the inputs before he takes it to the National Assembly. They just take it for granted that whatever the opinion of the legislator is, that is the opinion of his constituency, which is not necessarily the case at all times. But the legislators understand that nothing will happen to them if they are not accountable to the people. My colleague in the studio talked about a recall process. Since the National Assembly began in this country, has there been any legislator that has been recalled? Because the moment you send in a recall petition, the members of the National Assembly will rally around their colleagues, ensure they kill that recall petition. But we're seeing in the case of Natasha an attempt to recall her, and the blunder that the recall people were able to made to bungle their own case. So it becomes very clear that the recall process is so cumbersome that to initiate it and conclude it, perhaps it will take so many life cycles of national assemblies. So the legislators understand this, no matter what they do, they will not be recalled. The only thing is that they are guaranteed 4 years in the National Assembly. Maybe they will not be elected again. That can happen. So that is why there is negligence on the part of legislators, and that is why there is negative perception. So take, for example, now we have been told that no senator is given less than 2 billion naira as a constituency project allowance. What do they do with constituency allowances? And don't forget that this is not the only monies that are given. Padding in National Assembly has now become acceptable. Even at a point when padding was like the unforgivable sin, it made a lot of noise in this country. But today, who is talking about padding as an offense? It has become norm. And legislators are not talking about it because they are beneficiaries of padding also. So when you put an aggregate of all of these things together, ask anybody on the street, the perception they have about their members, their legislators, is anything but positive. And the legislators know that it's not your perception that will affect him. Despite your negative perception, the member of the National Assembly will say, not everybody will like you. Some people will like you, some people will not like you, and they will continue to justify whatever it is that they do. So again, it seems unfortunate that we sound very pessimistic and very negative, but that is the reality on the ground. Our legislators are not living up to expectation as far as their relationship with their constituencies is concerned.
So what is the way forward? I mean, what can we do to change this?
An empowered constituency would be the way out. And we will need to reform the recall process so that it makes it more practicable. So that when a legislator is underperforming and the constituency has a reason to recall him, it can be practicalized. By the time members of the National Assembly see 1 or 2 colleagues being recalled, they will sit up. But the National Assembly has become a syndicate. They will protect each other to make sure that they continue to remain there, whether they perform or that they underperform. But an empowered populace is the way out. And our leaders have understood this, and that is why they will never empower. And that is why they have used poverty as a weapon, because the weaponization of poverty will subject Nigerians from the time they wake up to the time they sleep to simply thinking about what to eat, what to drink, where to sleep, how to pay their children's school fees, how to go to work and come back. That is what occupies our minds. And as long as this is what occupies our minds, nobody will care about whether their legislators are performing or are underperforming. Our leaders understand this, and that is why they have used poverty as a weapon against us. Right. We need to empower our people. That is the way out.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Sunday. Back to you now. Before we conclude and talk about the way out and give a positive outlook to it now, there are challenges, obviously. We made mention of regional politics. The fact that we have just 20 out of 477 bills passed, what factors would you say contributes to the slow progression of these bills? And what is the way out? How can it be fixed? How can Nigerians have an assembly that truly reflects the people? We had a couple of callers who said they should scrap it. It doesn't belong to us. They should give us something else that is more Nigerian. But let's get your opinion on that.
Yeah, so I think that one of the basic challenges is, the politicization of sensitive issues in Nigeria. We don't look at things very objectively, and I think that is really a very big problem. So the gender bills, for example, we are looking at the gender bills as though it is meant for women. No, the gender bills are actually human rights bills, and if we have, for example, close to 50% of Nigerians being women, I mean, almost at par with men, and then you now see that level of persons are not represented in governance. You are losing from harnessing the values of those persons for development. And development means aggregating the values and skills of your populations for development. So I think that we need to look at it objectively. I mean, then, so for example, let's say there's a bill to end the farmer-elder conflict and to bring about ranching. The South might say, oh, this is for northern Nigeria. Oh no, but it's a conflict that affects every part of the country. So we need to look at, even if this thing is not situated in my section, right? It is a bill that will have effect on the generality of Nigerians. So we need to look at things holistically. For me, the way forward, really, I would say that the National Assembly needs to be more open. I was in the Netherlands and I assessed the National Assembly there. It was very easy, very little security checks. And I come to Nigeria and to assess the National Assembly, it is very difficult. In fact, you have to know somebody. Yeah. And they search you, you drop all your phones, every single thing that you have. I know we have security challenges in Nigeria, but we elected you. We also feel these security challenges. So you are not just the one feeling the security challenges. So you have to you have to feel what the people are also feeling. So people can assess you, meet their legislators, explain to them what has happened and all of that. So I think that the National Assembly needs to be more open. The constituency offices needs to work. Above all, really, the National Assembly should place the aspirations of Nigerians above politics and elite consensus.
All right, thank you so much for joining us this beautiful morning. I would say it's been a very, very impactful, interesting, eye-opening, informative and educative segment this morning. Thank you, Dengiyefa Angalapu, for joining us on Morning Show today.
Thank you for having me.
And to our guest who joined us all the way from Yola, Mr. Sunday Amos, thank you so much for taking our time to join us, all the way from Yola this morning.
Been a pleasure as usual.
All right. I hope as our listeners, you've been able to pick something from our conversation this morning. I hope you've been able to learn something from our conversation this morning. A lot has been said, a lot has been aired, but would conclude by saying that the 10th National Assembly first 2 years has been a mix of commendable legislative activity and areas requiring way significant improvement. So as Nigeria continues to navigate complex socio-economic challenges, the effectiveness, responsiveness, and accountability of its legislative body remains crucial to national development. And at the end of the day, thank you to our wonderful guests that came in to join us and shared their opinion, which is solely their opinion and not the editorial stand of Trust TV. But we do appreciate their positions on the show this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. And we're going on a quick break. When we get back, it'll be time to take a look at stories that made it to the front pages of the dailies. This day.